There are two viruses impacting African Americans right now. One is racism, the other is COVID-19. Here with tips on how to deal with a double pandemic is licensed therapist Bree Jenkins, joining us this morning with some great tips and great advice. Bree, welcome. Good to have you with us. How are you doing, first of all?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. I'm balancing things and happy to show up and very excited about a lot of the work that's being done in the country as well as in my practice as a therapist.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on. So let's help folks out there who are dealing with these two pandemics. You have some tips. Let's begin with the first. Allow pauses and breaks daily, weekly, monthly. How important is that?
It's super important. We really need to switch over to the concept of sustainable activism. A lot of times because social injustice goes unaware and it goes under the radar for such a long time, people sort of feel like we need to rush, like there's a race. We're going to do these things, we're going to get this money, and then invest in these programs, and suddenly racism is going to be over. And unfortunately, it wasn't created in a day, a year, 10 years, 100 years. So it's going to take time for us to make lasting change. We should have a sense of urgency, but we have to think of it like a cross-country road trip rather than a short-term race, which means you have to take breaks, you have to hydrate, you have to rest in order to be able to sustain the journey. So that concept is really important.
And the second tip goes along with that, because oftentimes you get so busy and caught up in the moment. It is so important to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you won't be much use to other people.
Absolutely. Prioritizing wellness and self-care. A lot of times people feel like this action they feel guilty about it, as though it's wrong and they need to just keep driving and doing as much as is possible. However, when we continue to do activism as well as the high alert of COVID, it wears on our bodies and we can actually risk burnout, which will then make you less compassionate, more likely to ignore issues long term, and more likely to not be able to show up in a very effective way. So you can look in the country, when we have teachers or doctors, police officers, therapists, and we get burnt out, we're not as effective at our job. And so this is a crucial piece for people to add into their regimen of understanding how to show up, which is really just prioritizing your wellness and doing it with the intention of, when I prioritize my wellness, I'll be able to affect even more change. I recently did a initiative to get 100 Black women into therapy called the Gathered Fight, which is under my brand, The Gathered Life, and we've raised $45,000 towards our $100,000 goal. And I was only able to do that by resting and taking care of myself. And then I came up with a concept and I was able to execute this project. So, I'm a living testament to following my own advice, and it really works. You still are able to show up just more effectively and be more passionate how you show up in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. We have about a minute left, and I know we have 3 more tips. If you could run through those so we get all the information in.
Absolutely. My third tip is to connect with positive message, media, and people to balance out the anxious triggers and to feel more hopeful. You have to make space for fun. My next tip is to set a boundary with triggering or insensitive people and messages. Use that mute button and unfollow. You don't need to ingest that right now. And then my last tip is to engage in life-affirming activities to balance the fear of death, sickness, and racial harm. That's your gardening, your hiking, you're going for a nature walk, painting, creative arts, playing with your kids and pets, dance to uplifting music, get outside, move your body. The world is not falling down completely. It's really important to balance positivity along with all of the things that we have to do for the racial unrest and the COVID-19.
Yeah, so it's important to be connected, but at the same time, you have to take care of your mind, your body, and your spirit. That is what I'm hearing. Bree, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And still to come, more on the big story of the day, the Supreme Court ruling against President